me saying if a trans kid cannot consent to HRT, then why can they consent to puberty? How does that work? And I don't want to allow something they could regret. If they can't consent to HRT, if they can't decide which puberty they want to go through, how do you, like, justify forcing them through puberty?
These retards are gonna get gay marriage repealed. Oh, and this is a person tweeting about me. Trans kids exist. I was one. I was not groomed into this. People like Asmongold get millions of views spreading hatred and denying our existence, while stories of trans adults and children are being suppressed and invalidated. Oh, you just don't know who you are. Oh, you fell for big pharma, or you're just mentally ill. I don't know about this person's history. I can't draw any conclusions on it. You are doing more damage to the entire trans community than you can even know.
But oh, I'm so evil for saying that, hey, you know, if a child cannot consent to HRT, then they can't consent to puberty.
And it's not just the trans community. There's AOE damage that's happening to the gay community as a macro community because you've decided to attach yourself like a parasite to the LGB community and then turn it into effectively a weapon for you to push this on children. This is a literally 80-20, 90-10 issue. Who cares about the age of consent?
The higher the pressure, the more dazzling the diamond.
In just the last few days, there have been multiple violent attacks in the subway system.
That's right. Mayor Adams giving mixed messages, claiming that criminals here are emboldened, while also insisting that the city itself is not out of control.
So criminals are emboldened, but crime not a problem. You know, that makes it sound like there's something we aren't being told. I wonder what that is.
Stories from New York City going viral on TikTok.
In recent days, dozens of accounts of alleged assault have popped up online. Police say a 40-year-old man has been arrested.
It's not the first time this type of incident has been reported in the city.
We hear this over and over again. The city's out of control. The city's out of control. The city's out of control. It's just not true.
Mayor Adams says the subway system is averaging about 6 felonies every day.
In response, the National Guard has been brought in to search bags, and 1,000 additional NYPD officers are now riding the trains too.
Right now, I was worried about getting pushed over the train.
Whoever they are, you need to stop that vehicle in its tracks.
That kind of like leads me to the other side. On the street, there is a general atmosphere of fear and disorder. Athletes, people being afraid to be on the train.
With the mayor pushing back on the idea that crime is rampant in the city and expressing concerns that social media is stoking fears.
There you are. No escaping us now.
So bad that the United States progressive politicians are starting to take notice. But underneath the surface, all this crime-related dialogue is something nobody's talking about, which is that there may be a citywide effort meant to hide the truth of what's really going on from the everyday working man who just wants to get on the subway and go about his life. But the problem is, he's starting to notice that something in the city is not quite right. Recently, women just walking down the street have been attacked. Police officers are up, and shoplifting in the city is so bad that the product is not physically chained to the store that it's in. It'll be stolen and sold on Facebook Marketplace. Many people have been saying for years that coming to the results of policies in a city that protects criminals and releases them without bail when they do anything wrong. But city officials say that crime is actually down. And although a perception of crime exists in the minds of many New Yorkers, those thoughts and ideas are all
You can't be rid of me so easily.
blown out of proportion by sensational TikTok videos posted by attractive people who were legitimately attacked and spoke up in the most powerful way they could have. And now we're in a situation where people's perceptions don't line up with what they're being told. And this has people asking questions like, will I be next? Is it even safe to ride the subway or travel alone in New York City? Or is the city just as safe and manageable as it's ever been? Because it can, in fact, be both of those things at the exact same time, which is why many people think the truth is in one from all of us, including
My friend.
Time to retreat. There's still a chance to stop them.
Those are bad guys.
We are undefeatable. In control here.
city in America. What a record.
In New York City, it is the police's job not only to police crime, but to tell us what types of crime are going on. Presumably so that people can make decisions to protect themselves as they walk down the street, while avoiding situations that might be beyond their personal risk level. And the latest crime statistics show reductions in a number of crime categories, while at the same time, there seems to be an uptick in videos on social media that tell a different story. And because of that, city officials say they are waging a war against perception, and they're doing their best to reassure the public that the crime stats tell the whole story.
But the mayor acknowledged the reality of these numbers may not match the perception of many New Yorkers.
These guys can bring crime down to zero. Come to me. But if you don't feel safe because you see this disorder going on,
There's still a chance to stop them.
that, hey, we're not safe.
So the mayor says, for your mind. And if you think crime is up, you don't have a rational basis for those thoughts. Now, in the mayor's defense, crime today is not what it was when he was a police officer on the street. But even though people in the Dark Ages were ahead of those from the Stone Age, they were not exactly living in the height of the Roman Empire, which preceded them. And it's got people saying that even though crime is technically better than where it used to be, it's still not where it was just a few years prior to where we are today. And apparently in the 1990s, when crime here was worse than it is today, your average Joe on the street perceived the city to be safer than people perceive it to be today. Now that could mean one of two things. Either it means that the generation preceding mine, which is scared to death right now, was a stronger, much more vibrant generation with soul and grit who understood true pain. Or it means that without the ability to rapidly disseminate information across the internet, in their pocket pretty much immediately, people's stories never. That brings up a big question. What's more dangerous, information about crime or actual crime that's being committed that affects freedom? Never miss! Sensationalization argument by Reddit TikTok-style videos. For example, if somebody Maslow's hierarchy of needs has self-preservation pretty high on the list, which means negative information will likely be more persuasive to people than positive information. And if it is in fact simple human nature to be more concerned with negative information that could personally affect you than to be positive information that also affects you, it means everything happening right now is completely normal. Things are not erroneous. But even though the city is technically safer today than it was in the past, some people think the official statistics do not tell the whole story.
Smoke screen. This place is secure.
So back in 2022, a poll of registered New York City the highest level ever reported by Quinnipiac University, who administered the poll. And a more recent survey from 2023 says that 79% of New Yorkers feel
We are undefeatable!
So who's right when it comes to crime? Watch your back.
Powering up. So many of them.
Back for another tour.
Crime did spike at the beginning of the year in recent time.
So, according to the mayor, crime is down. And he's right, it is down. Whatever goes up must come down. So, was it higher at any point in the past?
According to the latest report, transit crime rose 18%.
Never miss. Here's how you shoot. And that report is from before the National Guard was rolled out to help the police in the New York City subway system. Which could mean we're all looking at the same statistics, just interpreting them differently. Either way, the survey mentioned earlier says crime is up 54% since 2017. And the same survey found that 51% of respondents felt unsafe riding the subway now during the daytime, which is more than double the 19% who said the same thing back in 2017. But even though crime is down, and a lot of people, myself included, feel safer seeing troops and police all over the subway, there is dispute over whether or not this has actually brought crime down or just kind of rearranged the crime that we were already going to have.
The mayor says the subway system is still averaging about 6 felonies a day, which is why he wants to implement this.
Now, CBS is not the only local station to mention that crime has remained high since the National Guard rollout, but still, 6 felonies a day? What changed? Maybe
it was the type of felony that was committed in the first place. And this has critics saying that although the city is right to point out that things might be less dangerous, trading one type of felony for another type of felony may not be an actual indication that New Yorkers are better off. Also, when the types of crime getting reported change, the official statistics change along with them.
And some people say that when that happens, the statistics look different because some crimes fall through the cracks. And they say that's why people feel one thing but are being told another thing.
Doesn't dispel darkness. It helps me see the darkness and face it.
There was a historic surge in assaults last year, which neared 28,000.
So here we are with statistics telling us that although assaults are up, homicides, which are worse than assaults, are down.
But if crime is down cumulatively in multiple dangerous categories, does that mean overall crime is down? Critics say it does not, and there's actually a way to demonstrate this by looking specifically at the category of crimes known as felony assaults.
A loose definition of felony assault is attacking someone without legal justification with a weapon. But if someone attacks you and you're not using weapons, like let's say they use their hand, it's no longer a felony assault, but it's still an assault.
And you might be wondering, where does this new type of assault get recorded if it's not recorded as a felony assault? Well, here's where things get interesting, because according to Bloomberg, these assaults are the ones falling through the cracks that not everybody knows about.
In fact, they say that the TikTok crime wave we're witnessing is real, and there's support for it. According to Bloomberg, the New York City Police Department doesn't even record anything called aggravated assault in its crime report. Instead, dividing assaults into felonies and misdemeanors, and subsequently somehow sifting out aggravated assaults, of which there appear to be a little fewer than 1.6 per felony assault, to report them to the FBI.
And the claim basically is that assaults may go up, but we will never know it because they aren't accurately reported.
On top of that, there's other evidence to suggest that both felony and non-felony assaults are way up, and that both categories of crime have been rising for years. Okay, so now we get to these videos, and criminal sympathizers are quick to say that, you know what, these are isolated incidents, just a few videos that went viral, no big deal, it's sensational.
And as we just read, these videos are part of a larger story of things that are happening negatively to multiple people, not just those who posted about it.
And what's crazy is without TikTok, the public never have even known that this happened. And that's because not all assaults get reported to police.
And it's definitely faster to make a video about something right before it happens as you're walking down the street than it might be to locate a New York City Police Department, travel there, and fill out paperwork. On top of that, most assaults that occur without the use of a weapon are not reported to police at all.
We're talking only 42%, and given the lack of personal transportation options that many people who don't have an e-bike or a car are stuck with, that number could be even lower.
And that could mean a situation exists where the types of crime that get reported are those that are hardest to hide and cover up.
Like, let's take the incident of someone discharging a firearm. It uses sonic gun detectors to pinpoint and triangulate where that may have happened. There's a lot at stake when one of those goes off, and it's very hard to interrupt something like that and not report it, especially if the general public is aware that it happened.
And it's the same thing for crimes that may cost people to lose their ultimate possession. If something tragic like that occurs, it's very hard to cover that up as well.
Now, maybe the official statistics are right. Maybe our leaders are not misled. But the problem is that when something bad happens to someone, you then fear that it's not real, that it's all in their head, or that it's not a big ship shaping. That's insult and injury to someone who's just been victimized.
And it could be making the city's crime problems even worse.
So, what do we know about the person that was arrested? Well, he is a repeat offender, according to police. He has an extensive criminal record. He's been arrested 3 times in the last 6 months.
My time to shine.
So, as it turns out, there's another problem here in New York City that's causing people's perception to increase, and it has a lot to do with criminals being
Against the world!
And the scary thing about this is these have not only fallen
Station
to
area.
commit as
Keep
drastically
going.
gone up. In fact, there's really no ceiling for it because at what point are we going to put them in jail?
And it is the catch and release system of law enforcement in New York that has people worried.
And the question this has a lot of people asking now is how do they take their own personal safety seriously if the city isn't taking their own personal safety seriously? And what's it gonna take to put someone behind bars out there hurting people?
Against the world!
Most people find it very hard to believe that city leaders can take issue with people who are second
Rise, my friend!
when stuff like this is allowed to go on. And what nobody's talking about is that this is evidence. Evidence that punishing violent criminals would probably cause people to feel safer and better about their city. For example,
You'll have to keep fighting until we have a winner.
Wait, there's more. A recent study shows that 5% of criminals commit 50% of the crime we're dealing with. But sadly, just as the campaign to reform New York City's bail laws has remained into their current state took many years, it's probably the case that rolling those back could take an equally, if not longer, period of time. And many of the arguments for keeping bail reform in place go something like this. The fact that we have crime in New York City is not
Against the world!
the fact that we have increasing crime is other problems in society that have nothing to do with the criminals themselves. And the only way to fix it is to get more of it. There was society and make the world a greener, better place. Is that a real argument? Would that make New York City safer? What do you think the city should do to crack down on crime? Let me know. I'll see you in the next video.
When the chips are down, you want your heroes a little roguish and scruffy. Like me.
Control lost!
Hope and skepticism from transit riders and the busy Fulton Street subway line as the awareness detection system is up and running. The AI-powered scanner can reveal the presence of a weapon and exactly where it's located.
So believe it or not, crime in the subway has temporarily subsided, and it's not because of the new weapons detectors they're now testing. Instead, it's because the military has been down here since March, but they can't occupy the subway forever. And when they leave, and all that's left in the subway are a few body scanners scattered throughout, critics say the criminals will come back with a vengeance.
Tonight we're hearing from subway riders after the city began testing a controversial weapons
30
detection
seconds
system.
before you
It's
attack.
not going to
Get
work.
ready.
They putting it here because this is the main train station. Well, there's one around the corner.
It's nice to have
The
another
details on a
genuine
story
force
we've
for
been
good on
following.
our
Police have
side.
charged Randall
My
Contreras.
soul is
According
not
to the
as pure
DA,
as
he asked for
most
money and attempted to
There's
rob the
darkness
woman
inside
before
all of
attacking
us.
her.
This comes as the MTA talks about new crime statistics in the transit system. They say crime is headed in the right direction, but that is of no solace for the people
The
who
battle
fall
starts in
victim to
5,
this stuff.
4,
This week alone,
3,
transit crime is
2,
down
1.
44.4%.
All you need to do is capture the mission
For months
area.
now, New
Got
York
it?
City and the state have been working alongside law enforcement to try and keep the millions of people who use public transit safe.
It's really messed up. This is New York City. This
Relay
train system
deployed.
is very
It ain't
dangerous.
cheap.
You gotta blow your P's and Q's.
You're ready for it.
I went through with no problems, but Marshall Kramer walked through.
Together to victory. Us against the world. Require people to take off bags so they can search them separately. Too much like a bad memory.
Looks like the mission area is yours to capture now.
So crime may be down underground, but above ground, it's rising. And what nobody's talking about is that the city has a lot riding on these crime detectors because there are not
Capture the
just
mission area.
up here on the street and down there underground at the exact same time. Because alarming as New York City's subway crime wave was at the beginning of this year, many observers predicted that it wouldn't be long before the crooks down there would feel the presence of the military and extra police and then go commit crime somewhere else, which is exactly what's happening at street level. Because the 1,000 officer surge that's been taking place in the subway for months, checking bags and arresting fare beaters, it's worked. But while it's been working, multiple crime waves have sprouted up on the street, like increased shoplifting at our stores and businesses, a wave of moped-riding gangsters robbing diners as they eat bagels in Soho, plus our laundromats are under attack from thieves who work the night shifts. But with residents upset, it's no longer safe to walk down the streets. The city's got to do something as long as it doesn't, which the mayor is in favor of, or locking up our criminals, which the city council is not in favor of, because somebody might spend their birthday in jail. And that brings us to the real firepower! Detectors being randomly tested throughout the subway system, because if they work, the subway will finally become a progressive paradise for the bad guys. You're clear of the law abiding of their own volition. Or maybe just walk around the detectors because they're not going to be everywhere.
Maximum pulse!
That's not the only problem. Local activists now want to sue the city, saying these scanners will violate people's constitutional rights. Plus, the technology is not 100%, which critics say could lead to false alarms that put commuters and law enforcement in danger. But either way, the city is between a rock and a hard place because crime is everywhere the police aren't, which means these controversial weapon detectors, even if they don't work, they still might be here to stay. I'll patch you up.
Together to victory!
Us against the world!
So here we are at the Fulton Street subway station. This is where the weapon detectors were unveiled about a week ago. Ready for action? And then don't mind me. Shipped off somewhere else. I asked. There's a location. They said they were not exactly sure where the city was putting them because it's now a secret. It's a pilot program. They want to test them out and see how they work. But when they tested them in this very large, very busy space, people's reactions to how well they thought the machines were doing were on it.
I'll patch you up.
Right, so it looks like
This is real firepower!
Granted, there are some people who think they're going to make a massive difference. I am one of those people. I hope they work. And even though only time will tell if these machines are able to earn the trust of New Yorkers, there are some serious shortcomings with them, which is why when some people see them in action, they just scoff at them. So the way that these AI-powered body scanners work is they wherever it thinks that there's a threat, it pinpoints, and then the police will search that part of the bag to see what the machine found. These things are not It's Disney World, but they will be moved here in the subway once they roll them out. What's interesting is they specifically chose the station we're standing in to test these things out, likely to prove a point not only about security, but to also help them win a lawsuit related to security down here.
This is a nice train station.
Maximum pulse!
Disappear!
So right away, one commuter points out that if you don't want to walk through the scanners, you're not going to have to. You can go around, which is the problem with all subway security, like these metal barriers right here. If those aren't going to work for you and you want to jump, well, then you can just find another station that doesn't have these. But there's a reason they chose this station to do the unveiling. First of all, it's really modern. That's because it's a billion-dollar victory! And the guy built the Fulton Center. It's got a whole bunch of subway lines that connect you virtually anywhere in town. You're welcome. There was a major issue at the beginning of the year. Crime here was so bad that the city was so unable to curtail the issues that businesses were having here, like theft at the mall tenant Westfield. They broke their lease after most of the stores here ended up shutting down because they just could not. Now the city's in court with them, trying to sue them to stay for the next 10 years like they're supposed to. And look at the problems they were having here. Thieves were stealing from the cash registers of many of these little shops. And perhaps the reason that these weapon detectors will first be installed at high-profile stations like this one is so that the city can say that, hey, look, we have cleaned these places up, we're keeping them safe, but the fact that some of the crime being committed here doesn't involve weapons brings up another issue. How are they going to stop people from using their hands to do things that are wrong? And when these things think they've found a weapon in a backpack, how accurate are they?
I walked through with no problem, but Marcia Kramer walked through and set off
30 seconds before you attack. Get ready.
Mistaken for a weapon, which is why officers require people to take off bags so they can search them separately.
Okay, so two things are obvious right away. One, the machines have some serious tweaks that have to get worked out. Also, they just unveiled them for the press once at one station to say that they're coming, and then they've packed them up. I can't find them anywhere. Now, the way these scanners are supposed to work is that they are embedded with profiles of various objects that they are looking for. And when they find one of those things, they go off. When they don't find one of those things, they do not go off. But no technology is perfect, and one of the things people are worried about is what happens if it goes off and freaks everyone out and escalates things with a law enforcement officer to a dangerous level. And nobody wants to see the subway turn into the TSA like at an airport where it takes forever to walk through. You gotta take off your stuff, you gotta take off your shoes. We don't want that, especially when they ride this thing. But there's another problem with these scanners that look inside your personal belongings without opening them. It's that people much more
This is real firepower!
A few wasted minutes on your way to work.
civil disobedience entrenched in suit, writing, subject officers to suspicion of searches by the police every time they need to ride the subway.
That's right.
It's a violation of
Everything is mine.
So the real issue here that has activists concerned that these devices, they could be violating everyone's privacy in a way that is actually illegal. Is that the case? We'll have to find out. They're suing to try and stop them, even though they were only set up at one station and now they're gone. But what's interesting about this is the same activists, they were pretty upset that the NYPD started doing bag checks, yet those very same bag checks have worked. And maybe folks who aren't in favor of random searches have just decided that, hey, this is a necessary part of life, and it is effective, and it is getting weapons off the streets. Will they be convinced if the weapon detectors are rolled out and they start working? No one knows yet. But there's actually another reason the city needs these weapon detectors. And the hope is that if these things work, they might be convinced people to come back and start riding the subway again. Because right now, riders don't think that the people running the subway have their security or their best interest in mind. And these expensive devices might just help that start happening. Because if people don't believe this place is safe, they're not going to use it. And they aren't.
You're welcome.
So here we have over here we have the entrance to Supernova! Yes, crime is a big reason why people don't want to use the subway. But the other problem is that even when people try to use it, something
Born
else stops
again!
them. Some people just are those in the agency that
This is real firepower!
Second chances cancellations. Now, MTA chairman CEO believes that that was all the result of heat transfer failure. In other words, aging infrastructure.
So this report focuses on a series of delays that were caused by a regular malfunction happening down here in our aging subway, which, by the way, costs $20 million a year to run, and looks as inviting as a haunted house. Now, the delay in question happened when a transformer broke down, shutting off power to several stations in the subway, stranding people throughout the system when temperatures were 90 degrees. But it's not the temperature down here that's the problem. We haven't had AC in the subway ever. The real problem is that the system is not maintained in a manner that makes it reliable. I think we could all deal with old and ugly as long as we had reliable, safe service, but we don't have that. Instead, we have beautiful murals like this one, which is probably full of symbolism and unappreciated by everybody who walks by. But when you see stuff like this, you'll wonder where the billions of dollars that are supposed to go towards repairs are actually going.
When you underinvest in a
Against the world!
Subway doesn't have any money, but this idea that we are somehow investing in it when this is what our investment is getting us, old lights, old sign, and this chip and paint right here, you don't keep investing in something that's a bad investment, do you? In what world do investors pour money into something, get zero results, and then keep doing it? That's just not how investments work. On top of that, the trains themselves are delayed 15 to 20% of the time, depending on which line it is that you're riding on. And when the subway's purpose is to get people from A to B and it doesn't do that, how do you warrant further investment? Or at least, how do you convince the general public that more money this place needs when it's already so much?
Temperatures near triple digits lead the
Disappear!
Born again!
That is a major piece of equipment that is 30 years past its useful life.
Okay, so one way of looking at this recent cascade of failures that shutting down the entire system is to say, yes, the system is so amazing that it works properly. But here we have a piece of equipment that was 30 years past its useful life. That means back in 1994, it was time. Whose job was it to do that? Where was the money? Where did that go? What was that spent on? We've had 30 years to do basic maintenance and we're not doing it. And now we're being told that we need to keep investing in such a system that for 30 years has been failing with the little bit of investment that it has been getting. And if a basic equipment failure that shuts down the entire system is such a big deal that it warrants a press conference, why wasn't it such a big deal that it was ever fixed when it was supposed to be fixed? And many people aren't buying the excuse that the money was never there over the last 30 years to fix this thing because after it broke and shut down service everywhere, they magically found the money to fix it.
Means it's at the tipping point. We have to replace this stuff.
He was a major proponent of congestion pricing, which would have generated $15 million in revenue for the MTA.
Whose job was it
to fix this. And after they left the MTA 25 years ago, who came into their position and was supposed to do their job and didn't do it? Do you see? We've got a lot of failure going on here, and it's not just a one-time thing, and it's not because of congestion pricing taxes of all things. Yes, those would have brought in millions of dollars to the subway. Yes, they were banking on running their operation the way they've been running it for the last 30 years, ignoring equipment failures and just getting a whole bunch of new money. But where is this money going? I looked into that, and according to this Reddit discussion, where anonymous posters give their 2 cents, 58% of the budget for the subway is spent on employee salaries. That's over half the money that they get goes to paying people that might not be doing their jobs. Debt is also a major issue because every time the subway wants to make some sort of capital improvement, they don't have the money to do it, so they sell bonds and go into debt to make their repairs. Or to build these fancy new ad-supported projectors telling us about the Olympics. When the old ad spammers looked like this and just showed us a poster, what's wrong with this? Nobody's even looking at this stuff. And it looks like the things that are dragging the subway down are its past failures combined with its current failures and its reactionary method of management. We only fix catastrophic problems after they have occurred, not 30 years ago when they were supposed to get fixed, yet somehow we magically have the money immediately after it goes wrong. And the entire time it wasn't fixed, our excuse was that we didn't have the money, so something's not adding up. And we're also spending millions of dollars on modernization programs like this cool tap-to-pay system right here. And what most people don't know is these new fancy smartphone readers, they're a replacement for the MetroCard system, which doesn't work correctly. Yes, we know that. But prior to that, we had a token-based system, and there were never tokens lying on the ground that people would leave because those were actual money that would get you into the subway and let you ride it. They did away with those machines, spent millions of dollars upgrading them, and now we have another replacement for them, which also costs millions of dollars, all to accomplish the idea of people getting on the train and riding it. Which could mean that anytime the city is supposed to spend money on the subway, they just waste it, or they go after projects that don't have any meaningful impact on the experience every single day of riders. Riders who just want to get on the train, not worrying about whether or not they're going to be assaulted by someone who's sitting next to them. And now we're going to get weapon detectors that aren't exactly a replacement for New York's finest, the NYPD. The money that's being spent on weapon detectors couldn't that be spent on hiring more police to keep people safe, or on improving the train service so that more people would pay to use it, and then they'd earn more money from fares, and then they'd be able to keep improving the system? Is it a novel concept that the MTA now has to rely on providing a service that people actually want to use and rely on and are proud community support versus just getting money from taxi cars that were supposed to come down here and fund this thing? What do you think about that? Are weapon detectors the right answer? Is the subway safe? Appreciate you watching. I'll see you in the next video.
Just what I needed.
Your powers are mine!
Disappear!
The one thing everyone here agrees on is that the transit in the city isn't going to get better anytime soon.
If you've noticed any delays in the last year, chances are you are not alone.
Trains might not be moving as quickly through the stations because modernization projects may have to be deprioritized because of
I have come to the difficult decision that implementing the planned congestion pricing risks too many unintended consequences.
85% of the people that come into the
I won't make the same mistakes again.
do it on buses and trains. These are the folks who need the investment.
Mayor Adams says the subway system is averaging about 6 felonies every day. He wants those statistics to improve.
This is video from inside the start at the train. A disappearing warning.
It would have generated jobs, construction jobs. It would have been a boost to our economy. It would have improved transit service for our region.
But many express concern that the plan would put more people into the system without a plan to improve service.
Not going anywhere.
Just when the everyday working man thought he'd stuck into the system by rejecting financial tyranny, the subway starts falling apart. Almost as if its sudden deterioration is completely on purpose. But even though this might look like retribution, progressive leaders upset that the people of the city haven't gone along with their plans of world consolidation, what no one's willing to admit is that even if the city taxes every car on the road, none of that money's going to address the real reasons our subway is perpetually terrible. When it already costs billions.
Your powers are mine!
Because billions in new revenue might pay for breaking some won't address New York's mental health crisis. What's these shelters becoming so full that homeless have nowhere to live but in the subway itself? And not only is the subway under the last resort for New York's criminals with assaults, robberies, and knife-related incidents going through the roof. Leaving many to wonder how installing elevators and shiny new LED monitors to blast us with TV commercials.
By the eye of Agamotto!
Rampant down here. How exactly is it going to convince people to start paying for the train? Because last time I checked, no one does that anymore. Which brings us to the real reason the subway system is perpetually terrible. All the money in the world won't face a justice system that immediately releases criminals and fails to punish minor offenses. And all of the money the city was hoping to raise certainly isn't going to help the homeless rebuild their lives and get off the streets, since none of that money would ever have been meaningfully spent on mental health programs. And of course, everyone's aware of this. The governor's aware of this, which is why she put a stop to congestion pricing, and everybody breathed a sigh of relief. But behind the scenes, the wheels of wealth redistribution have been working quickly to push as hard as possible for reactivation of New York City's car tax, which looks like it may happen at some point because all the infrastructure to tax your car is going away. On top of that, activists say that all of these problems aren't because of crime or corruption. No, it's because the government here doesn't have enough of our money. And it's been revealed that they're coming to get it, one way or another.
Down to 30 seconds.
You get away! Disappear! You get away! Hey, Dee, enjoy
New York City subway. There's a street right here, it's not great down here. No, it's not. And that's what's got activists so fix this place. Congestion pricing has been canceled. Actually, that's what we've been told. You wouldn't know by looking at this place that it already costs $20 billion a year to operate. But alas, that's not enough money to make repairs or improvements, and we are likely to see these taxes again in the near future. How soon is anyone to guess? But before we get into when these taxes
Supernova! By the eye of Agamotto!
So these protesters, they definitely have a good point. Now that the money's not coming as soon as they thought it was, nothing down here is going to change anytime soon. What exactly people were expecting to change based on how expensive this is to operate already is not something anyone can really agree on. Right now, our $20 million gets us peeling paint, trash cans that look like they themselves want to be thrown away, crap $1 million monitors, and elevators that never ever seem to be working correctly. If this is what $20 billion a year gets us, what's an extra $1 billion going to do? Because $1 billion is the amount of revenue that was projected based on the license plate readers, which are an unavoidable toll, and all of that money was going to come down here and go to the subway. But $1 billion only represents a 5% increase over what it already cost to operate this place. Yet we're supposed to believe that an extra 5% in the city's budget was going to change what you see here and make it a magical, brand new place with trains that run on time and no crime. Plus, the subway being a backwards, poorly run operation is only part of the problem. And what's even more fascinating than the belief that taxing cars was going to change what you see down here is the people that are advocating for all of this money don't expect it to come from the people who use the subway itself, which critics say makes this the perfect example of an attempt at wealth redistribution.
You're ready for action!
My fate isn't small, a disappearing
make what they called a generational mistake. They accused her of caving to political pressure. I think it's very short-sighted of a lot of people.
So I get that people are angry with the governor. Some are saying that this is because there are elections. The problem is that this subway doesn't make enough money on the welcome to stand on its own two feet. And if the real businesses don't make enough off of paying customers to stay open, they end up shutting it down. You know what the congestion was supposed to generate over $1 billion of extra revenue? Well, you know how they arrived at that number? It's only 30% higher than the $700 million the city loses from people who don't pay to use it. And what's crazy is nobody that wants like congestion pricing and a better subway also wants people to pay.
Vehicle reached a checkpoint. Keep up the momentum.
They want all of this stuff, but they don't want anybody to pay for it. In fact, it's the same people that usually advocate for the subway to be cheaper, which it can't be. The city has ways to help riders who can't afford the full fare to get ahead
this.
Right now, we're in a terminal that has a police station in it, and these gates are totally unguarded with people just jumping in. They are never going to crack down on fare evasion if this is the system that they just let operate. However, even though the subway itself is obviously a complete disaster, all of that infrastructure that's going to eventually crash cars, it still exists. It's not being torn down, and the governor herself said that this was just a pause. And anyone who grew up in the 80s or 90s with cassettes and stop are not the same function.
This is real firepower! This is real firepower!
Disappear!
Someone his full support behind Governor Capitol's decision.
By the eye of Agamotto!
Well, would you look at that? The pause on congestion pricing has been premeditated. Everyone knew this was going to happen. Probably because it doesn't take a genius to figure out that we're going to tax everything on the street. That might be bad for the city's economy. And the reason it's so weird for the governor to say that the economy is the reason we have to turn it up down at Harry Don't worry, because she herself was at one point a big proponent of congestion pricing, and they had to just say that it will help the local economy because more traffic makes people late, slows things down, and as we lose economic activity because we're stuck in traffic, but we're also stuck waiting for trains. Subway lines which cost $20 billion a year to operate. The likely reason this is why it is now on pause is congestion taxes, they were never fairly targeted. For example, they're based on vehicle size, which sounds logical because a small car causes less congestion than a big truck. But the big truck is how your food gets to the grocery store, and that big truck, it was going to get charged 2 to 3 times the amount of money that the cars were going to be charged. And although cars, commuter traffic would only get hit once a day with the congestion fee, business
Only
traffic,
60
like
seconds
those trucks
left.
bringing food to the store, they were going to get hit every single time they drove into the congestion zone. And what do you think they're going to do with the cost of
This is real firepower!
Subway to pay for it to get better so that everyone who's down here now not paying for it can enjoy something nicer. And even though none of the benefits of congestion pricing are ever going to be had by actually having it in place, what's very strange is no one at this point is advocating for the tax to only apply to non-business traffic. After all, 85% or whatever of people can take the subway. Why are we taxing the guy in his Mercedes with his laptop? Why are we taxing the 5 people that are going to an apartment to renovate it?
Chief on tunnel!
They can't take the subway, but the rich man can.
By the eye of Agamotto!
Looking at creative ways to try and suck more money out of a system that wastes so much of it. And of course, the way they're going about things is extremely. You get a weapon! You get a weapon! You get a weapon! Trying to be. In fact, critics say this is what we're experiencing right now.
Well, you can't expect to win them all.
Subway trains might not be moving as quickly through the station because modernization projects like new signals and let trains go faster and closer together may have to be deprioritized because of Governor Hochul's sudden decision to put the brakes on congestion pricing. The new signal.
So already we're being told that the disaster that the subway is immediately turning into is because congestion pricing didn't happen when it was supposed to. But what nobody's talking about is that the renovations needed to fix up these trains and make them run better weren't going to immediately happen on day one either. And the system has so many problems and so many delays throughout it all the time that this is going to take years to fix. And the question many people are asking advocates of congestion pricing is, how do we know the subway wouldn't be functioning the exact same way it is today had this system been turned on a couple of weeks ago? Are we really to believe that the same day the system were to be activated, all of its problems would have magically disappeared? Are we supposed to believe it wouldn't look like this even while the cars are being taxed? And the city's also telling us that many of its improvements to accessibility are also going to be delayed because of congestion pricing. But in order to understand why that too is probably not the whole story, we've got to look at the main reason for train delays. Because the issue of train delays is going to expose how pretty much everything that's wrong with the subway has nothing to do with congestion pricing. And look at this, while they tell us that train delays might be the fault of congestion pricing, the MTA's own website says they've been trying to upgrade their signals for over 10 years, 2009. That's absolutely ridiculous. And how are we supposed to believe those delays would go away if the MTA's budget increased by 5% because of congestion pricing? Something about all this does not add up.
Now the head of the MTA said that various experts will look at just what the MTA can afford to do now that its capital program has been shredded by Uncle's decision.
I may be powered by chaos, but I'm trying to bring a bit of order to the universe.
30 seconds before you attack.
So look,
Get
obviously
ready.
the head of the MTA very disappointed that congestion pricing didn't happen, but how come we're now being told that all of the stuff that the MTA promised to do, it's no longer able to keep doing? Making it seem like just as the governor was being accused of being political, so is everyone else. This whole thing is being political. We're being told the subway is terrible because we didn't let our taxes go up. And the reality in front of us is that all of the subway's problems will no longer be blamed on mismanagement or corruption. Oh no, they're going to be blamed on the people of New York who decided not to go along with the plans of our leaders.
What are the biggest concerns, do you think?
So it's beginning. Don't get that vehicle to its destination.
Yeah, so there's no way activists are going to be happy about
My
this.
work
How
here is
on
not
earth
done.
could they go about repairing the subway by canceling things like electric buses?
Absolutely no one in favor of congestion pricing wants to see something like that happen. Yet when you look at how electric vehicles are already failing across the country en masse, the idea of rolling them out in New York seems like a bad one. And the city's probably going to save billions by relying on old school technology that just works when you press the start button. Or but New York City doesn't get all of its energy from renewable sources, and it's hard to argue that the environment would be better off if we had a fleet of electric buses rolling around charging on fossil fuel plants just like the subway. But on the other hand, the city's decided to stop doing many of the things that would actually increase the subway's usability. And not only is this going to make things harder for people who just want to use it and go about their day, making the subway less accessible by refusing to fix broken parts of it like these escalators or refusing to install elevators just is going to make it harder for people to adapt to congestion pricing when it eventually
Against the world!
Disappear! You're 46 floors, 5 flights up. The 61st Street escalator is broken, so the closest elevator is Queensboro Plaza. Both 36th and 46th Street
My
stations
fate
were due to
isn't
get
sealed yet.
elevators. It would have cost $17 million in congestion pricing derived funds. The council member has called numbers.
So the idea of elevators for the subway, obviously it's not new.
For the sake of the win, we have to pick up the
They've
pace.
been building these things into the subway for decades now.
But as we just heard, elevators may not After waiting for someone to come along and convince them that even if we were to spend millions of dollars renovating the subway with all this congestion money, that it wouldn't turn out to look
It's
just
difficult
like the
to keep
inside
up
of that
with me,
elevator
I
because it would be
know.
neglected, it wouldn't be taken care of, and the people down there don't respect it because they don't pay for it.
Now, would
The rink is
accessible
getting bigger,
methods of
and
entering the
from the looks
subway
of it,
help it?
a lot more
Absolutely, yes, they
unstable.
would. I've got 2 little kids. We can't really go anywhere without a stroller, but the problem is I'm not sure I would necessarily want them in the subway, even if there were working elevators.
Again, the elevators are absolutely disgusting. The subway itself is not safe. In fact, crime is so bad on the subway, the National Guard is still down there at various times of the day policing it along with police who now do random bag checks. It's essentially a military operation zone. Throughout the system, you'll see armed guards with fully automatic weapons
fate
and
isn't
deep
sealed
down, even
yet.
though nobody in leadership wants to admit it, throwing billions of dollars into a black hole of a subway system isn't going to get anybody the results they want. It's going to take money from people shopping at the grocery store, and we're still going to have exactly what we have today. And as someone who doesn't drive, that's fine. We're going to take money from the cars. We're going to improve the subway. But once we started looking into exactly how much money is spent on the subway that we already have, personally, that makes me feel like they're just going to waste the extra money that they get, and all of those promises they're going to be broken. Broken elevators and broken escalators that they said they would spend all this money to install, and it cost millions of dollars to install, but now they're even more because we're not maintaining them at all. And in my personal humble opinion, which I almost never give when I'm making videos, there are 2 things we need. Keep me from getting jumped when I'm down there trying to get to work, and make the trains run on time. Is that really so hard? 2 things. That's it. Do that, and then we'll talk about throwing extra money at a system that doesn't work for anybody. What do you think? Is that true? Is that your opinion? Do you have another opinion? Am I wrong about suggested pricing? Should I go back to doing that directly? So let me know. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next video.
Your faith is feeling stronger already.
A deafening blast.
An explosion rips apart a sidewalk in Midtown, sending a chunk of concrete flying right into the air. It's captured on camera too. Seriously injuring two people who stepped across just.
So this sidewalk right here that I'm standing on recently exploded. People walking right on it. And although nobody was injured, investigators still have no idea what caused this thing to blow up, which once again has critics ringing alarm bells. Actions like this are now more common than ever before.
Without warning, firefighters told her to get out. City inspectors had discovered the building next door was unstable and had to be demolished.
This house right here with a family
I won't
who's
make
been
the
here
same
for decades
mistakes
was forced
again.
out and now has to live in a hotel.
I just don't think it's fair.
This video inside the Queens Midtown Tunnel shows water pouring down the ceiling, showing the severity of the
Investigators say that contractor drilled 50 feet down into the East River, then another 50 feet through the soil. That's when the drill cracked the cast iron liner above the tunnel's
I won't
exhaust
make the same
duct.
mistakes again.
Get that vehicle moving again!
So all over town, things are falling down and nobody has any idea why. But what nobody's talking about is even though stuff like this is happening more and more often, it seems like the city's doing less and less to alert residents to the dangers lurking all around them. And this all started a year ago with a massive parking garage collapse in Lower Manhattan, which the city still cannot determine the cause of, which was followed by another partial collapse of a different building right above an Amtrak train tunnel. You can even see right through the floor of that building to the trains below. It was terrifying. And if the problems at that building hadn't been reported at the last minute, there would have been another massive disaster on the city's hands. Yet although that partial collapse brought in a massive investigation covering every parking garage in town, which resulted in several shutdowns, the issues garages and old structures are facing may have more to do with what's underneath them than what they're made out of, as evidenced by recently collapsing sidewalks and homes that are falling down by construction projects, leaving people homeless. And this has many residents terrified because somehow these unsafe construction projects were green-lit by our regulators, and now you've got generations of families with nowhere else to go. And that brings us to the real reason why this city is now exploding beneath our feet and falling down on top of us at the exact same time. This is what happens when you have 8 million people living in a decaying urban environment that nobody takes care of, which spells absolute disaster for many families living in old apartments, as well as those working in offices nearby massive construction projects that have little to no oversight. But although issues at construction projects have been a growing problem for years, the years of neglect that this city has experienced are now catching up with it as the very ground we walk on threatens to swallow us up.
I won't make goodbye for me.
Down to 30 seconds!
Chaos control!
There's no time to wait. Hit them with
Sorcery!
Bring on the chaos. Stronger on it. You get a weapon. You get a weapon. You get a weapon. You get a weapon. You get a weapon.
Oh man, that's crazy.
Chaos!
You see the scaffold?
We're headed straight for the shrine
Didn't bring
of
down
the
the
wind.
scaffold,
creatures are
even though it's
no
like
longer a threat.
about to fall in that hole right now.
But the site of this recent sidewalk explosion is not out in the middle of nowhere. In fact, this happened across from this building and this Marriott Residences. And we are right in the middle of Midtown Manhattan, just down the street from Grand Central and the Chrysler Building. And you'd think this would be an area of town that people were keeping an eye on, but I guess not. So hopefully that changes. If you're about to see what happened right over here, will be pretty incredible.
Disappear!
Can you believe this? You're just walking down the sidewalk and then boom, this thing right here totally explodes.
Better than
People
Aunt
interviewed
May's
the day
chicken
this
soup.
happened said it sounded like a bomb going off, and I bet it did. A pretty big hole was made right here. There was scaffolding all over the place at the time, which is gone, and the crazy part is nobody got hurt, which is kind of a miracle when you look at just how busy this part of town is, and the fact that this is the entrance to a hotel where people live. And when the explosion happened, it was like shrapnel sending debris and trash and whatever was on the ground, along with big chunks of the sidewalk itself, up in the air. And it was all caught by this security camera right here. Now, when the explosion took place here, there was scaffolding everywhere. Kind of like the massive amount of scaffolding we still have across the street where there was no explosion. Now, the reason that this is here is because buildings are required to do regular maintenance so that they don't fall down and hurt people. But nobody, I guess, is required to do regular maintenance on the ground we walk on, which, to be fair, shouldn't need a whole lot of it. But there's a lot going on beneath our feet in this city, and that explosion could have been a humanitarian disaster.
See, I started alerting the managers to get people out of the restaurant because the restaurant was right there.
New Yorkers ran to help, including Derek Petrie.
It was heroic, but it was just a accurate instant to people's lives, you know.
So after the explosion ended up happening, people that were on this side of the street ran across the street to where it happened to see if anyone needed help. That's awesome. But although there are several theories over what may have caused this explosion, a definitive explanation has not been given to us. And you see how it says gas and there's another arrow pointing towards where the hole appeared? Well, it is thought that gas lines...
Emma.
Oh? Am I that obvious?
You hate me because your version of me almost decimated the mutant population.
And there are more to learn at the bottom of my boot.
The battle starts in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All
All we need to do is capture the mission area.
Over the weekend, which saw global leaders come together to mark the momentous occasion. The appointment of Pope Leo XIV sees a return to the Catholic Church. The new Pope the Vatican's diplomatic force that the family is founded on the stable union between a man and a woman. His position is a far cry from the Pope's blessing of LGBTQIA relationships, which is sending liberal Catholics into a total fear.
I'm a little concerned about this choice for the LGBTQ plus community. In 2012, he gave an address to bishops, and he lamented the popular culture fostered and sympathy for beliefs and practices that are at odds with the gospel, and that's a quote. And then he cited the homosexual lifestyle and alternative families comprised of same-sex partners and their adopted children. I think that Pope Francis made great changes in terms of embracing the LGBTQ plus community and extending blessings to the community. And I hope that this is that this Pope doesn't
creatures are no longer a threat.
roll back to
saying that the unborn and elderly enjoy dignity as God's creatures. Liberal online commentators blasted the Pope in his views, with this person saying, I do think it's fairly tragic that the new Pope has regressive views on gender and sexuality, but I think all the people standing the cardinals forgot that the Catholic Church is an inherently evil institution. Pope Francis was sort of a fool, and even he was far from perfect.
Judge, jury, executioner!
Your powers are mine!
Us against the world!
Marriage between one man and one woman, abortion is demonically evil. He also declared truth must be spoken even with blunt language. No ambiguity, no compromise, just clarity. And while accused of being against gay marriage and abortion, he has publicly criticized Donald Trump and J.D. Vance for their views on immigration and deportation.
The most powerful spiritual voice on earth just issued a direct challenge to the most powerful political voice in America. And he did it in front of more than 100 diplomats around the globe. Pope Leo XIV condemned mass deportation that violated human dignity. He warned nations against treating migrants like disposable burdens. And without naming names, the message was unmistakable. He referred to cases like Gilmar and he also brought up Andrew Romero, a gay asylum seeker that was sent back to face abuse. Both cases happened under Trump's orders. And while President Trump celebrates deportation numbers like stock market wins, the Pope is calling this what it is. A human rights crisis.
More help is never
Pope Leo
bad.
said, we must never treat people as statistics. Every migrant has a name, a face, and a story. That was a shot across the ocean to Trump and Vance. This is the second time in a month that the Vatican has publicly challenged Trump's moral authority.
And this was seen during J.D. Vance's meeting with the Pope for his inauguration, with commentators noticing this person said, Zelensky is a first world leader to meet Pope Leo XIV, and J.D. Vance had to stand in line to talk to the Pope for 15 seconds. This person agreed to go the way Pope Leo XIV just threw J.D. Vance with a simple hand gesture and used to move along is hilarious.
Down to 30 seconds.
Judge, jury, executioner!
Us against the world. No more delays.
Your powers are mine! Judge, jury, executioner!
Us against the world. 10 seconds.
Would have beaten Trump? Could have beaten Trump, and I think that Kamala could have beaten Trump. It would have beaten.
Well, you can't expect to win them all.
You could have beaten Trump. No amount of fortifying elections could have seen you beat Trump. And as we saw, Kamala didn't come close either. So why is the president saying that now? That's beyond me. Also beyond me is why they would be uttering a sentence like this. Listen here as he speaks, the California wildfire victims lose